Should pirates operate capital ships? The ship that I'm showing on screen right now obviously is not what you would consider a capital, though lengthwise it does kind of reach into that territory, being as long as a light corvette like the Hammerhead. It's a difficult question. I think that, certainly when we were talking about the Corsair in the last episode, I think that ships like the Corsair, upwards to ships like this here, the Caterpillar, are probably going to be the bread and butter for pirates. The low end of that scale, I really think, is going to be the Cutlass. Now, some people might say, oh, well, you're totally eliminating fighters from the game. And it's just, right now, the way the game is developing, I think that we need, when people were when they were showing off Pyro and people were excited, I think I was more excited because I feel that adding that extra kind of star system, that extra dimension, that extra bit of, experience to the game, so that players can get the experience of flying to another star system and then flying around the other star system, I think is going to solidify a lot of the arguments that I've been making about the current state of quantum travel, especially in regards to fighters and ships of that size. And I think that people are going to gravitate towards more of these kind of medium-sized ships, of which the Caterpillar is obviously the larger extreme of the medium-sized ships. But full-blown capitals, I don't think are like a daily driver, to use that expression. I don't think that you're going to see a capital ship as something that is going to be an everyday sort of thing. I think it is going to be more of a niche ship. It's going to be more of a special applications and special situations type ship. I don't think it's going to be an everyday driver for a pirate, just because the logistical train that comes with managing and maintaining something of that size. Now, do I think that capital ships, that owning them should be profitable? Depending on the activities that you do, I think it should. Now, if you're, the UEE hiring out mercenaries to fight off Vandal or pirate incursions somewhere, it's a very hard sell to tell people that, oh, by the way, we need to hire you to go and, take care of this pirate threat over here, or this Vandal threat over here, but you're going to totally lose money on the deal. The entire premise doesn't make sense. So it's gonna, you can go ahead and create that content with those rules and say that's the rules that we feel that should be in place, and then no one's gonna do that content because it's a waste of time and a waste of money, and you're gonna end up having spent all these hours of developer time working and developing and creating all this content. And, certainly if you watch a lot of the Inside Star Citizens, the amount of work that goes into creating even these simple basic pieces of content right now, especially when they're still developing the tools to kind of automate a lot of that. I mean, imagine doing all that work and basically spending all those resources only to then turn around and see it all just kind of blow up, because no one wants to do it because there's no money to be made doing it. Now, as a counter argument to that, it could be possible that, CIG might say, we're not going to make capital ships quite profitable, maybe break-even-ish region of profitability, but by doing these big capital ship missions, you unlock big chunks of reputation with a certain faction, I'll just make one up, the 7th Fleet, You're over in some backwater system helping the 7th Fleet, defeat the Vandal or pirate incursions or whatever. And by doing that, you gain a certain amount of reputation that allows you to earn sort of military-grade capital ship components for your ship. And so you kind of go well, that's something that I want to do. I'm not really making money. I'm kind of breaking even on this deal, but I am kind of earning rewards that are valuable to me in a different way. So in a way, they could go that route, and that wouldn't be a horrible route to go. I think that by going a route like that, you would kind of put capital ships in a place where they have their use and they're certainly fun to play, but it's not something that people are just going to spam relentlessly. Like everywhere you go, it's going to be like, how many javelins can we bring? How many, Idrises can we bring to a fight? Where it kind of becomes in the end almost like EVE Online, say around 2009, 2010. I'm not sure how it is now because I quit like almost a decade ago, but we were at a point where it was just capital ship spam all the time. We, being someone who went from a transition from the battleship era to the capital ship era, at first it was really cool and we were all very enthusiastic. And then we realized, I think after the fact, that we really lost something in that. And so I think that maybe CIG is kind of looking at it from that point of view, and they're saying, we don't want the universe chock full of capital ships 24/7. We don't want it to, we don't want orgs to feel like, well, if you can't bring capital ships everywhere you go, then you're basically nothing. So CIG may go that route. They may go a route where capital ships aren't exactly profitable, but where they are worthwhile, in these niche situations where they are worthwhile, they're very worthwhile to bring. So, it could take that shape. So, with those kind of limitations, do I think that a capital ship is a good idea? It is a profitable idea for a pirate to own? The Javelin and the Idris, not so much. There's too many things that are up in the air. To be honest, to answer that question with any degree of accuracy or certainty, I would say, ask me again in 3 years. Ask me again in 3 years what I think of the Idris and the Javelin as a pirate ship, and I can tell you, because there's so much of that world that we really don't even have that world yet. We have none of that. None of that has taken any kind of real shape, so it's very difficult to say. Ships, however, like the Polaris, the Nautilus, and the Hammerhead, I think, because at least the Hammerhead is in the game, we can kind of get something of a hint of what operating a ship like that is going to be like in terms of landing field restrictions, travel times, what it's like to operate that sort of thing. The Hammerhead really was the first one through the door, so obviously it's also going to be the one that gets shot down the most, but both, literally and figuratively. But I think that with those ships, we have a better idea of how they're going to be accommodated in the universe, and certainly we have seen the restrictions on landing sites. I don't think I'm going to ever be able to land a Nautilus at Grim Hex, sadly. But I think with ships like that, they're going to be in a zone. The Corvettes and, the light Corvettes, I think they're going to be in a zone where it's not a bad idea, but it's something that is definitely not going to be an everyday driver. It's going to be something that you bring out on certain special occasions. Equipping it is probably going to be something of a pain in the ass, but if you do put in the time to equip it right, and you do kind of keep it, someplace where it's relevant to a lot of the things that you're doing, and logistics is a big concern with a ship like this, because you need to be able to land it somewhere that accommodates it, and somewhere close enough that you can get access to it when you need it, because what's the point of having a ship if you can never gain access to it when you need it, right? So that's what kind of makes me cautious around these ships, but at the same time, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about ships like the Hammerhead, the Polaris, and the Nautilus in terms of pirate use. Now, for the broader player base who obeys the law and follows all the rules and is nothing but good guys, I think that capital ships are probably going to be easier to maintain and operate, whereas for pirates, they're going to be, logistically at least, much more difficult. So I think that something like a Nautilus, operating something like a Nautilus and a Polaris for a pirate is going to be somewhat akin to what operating a Javelin is going to be like for a legitimate player. It's going to be something of a logistical nightmare, but where you can use it, it's probably going to be fun. But if you're thinking that you'll be able to use it any day and every day, probably not. Now, we're talking about the logistical difficulties, the limitations of capital ships. And some people might say that's why pirates should only operate fighters. Well, I disagree. Because fighters, to a certain extent, suffer from a similar problem of limitations that the capital ships do. They may not have the logistical issues that the capital ships do, but they do have travel and mobility issues. They are very fast ships at sub-quantum speeds, but at quantum speed, they are limited in their speed. They're probably some of the slowest ships in the game, and they're also the most limited in terms of range. And piracy is very much about asymmetrical warfare. It's about not attacking where your enemy's strong. It's attacking where your enemy's weak and taking advantage of situations. There was that old thread in the old forums where that guy was sitting there saying, if I'm running my trader fleet in a large convoy, how do you pirates expect to attack me? And it's just like, easy. We don't. We go for the guy in the Orion who just watched a YouTube tutorial about, here's how I take my Orion into low security space and mine all the most valuable minerals right under the pirates' noses and no one can find me. That's the guy that we go after. We don't go after the fully reinforced convoys. We're not going out looking for, staged fleet battles with capital ships. We're looking for easy money, high risk, high reward. That's what we're playing the game for. So I think that when you kind of realize that, when you kind of accept it, you go, okay, now I understand, how this works. And having a fighter doesn't really jive with that, because you want to be able to be mobile. You need to be able to be somewhere of consequence when you're needed. And that, with a fighter, is going to be a lot more difficult, because you're always going to be playing catch up with the bigger ships, especially the ships that you're hunting. If the ship that you're hunting can travel through quantum twice as fast as you can, and he goes from Harcorp to Olisar in 10 minutes where it takes you 15 or 20, you're never going to catch them. You might be faster at sub-quantum speeds, but what point is that? When we're talking about a universe this big, what good is that? So I think that for pirates, there's an equal amount of limitation, though it's not based on the same things at the low end as it is at the super high end. And I think that realistically, the sweet spot is going to be Cutlass or better, and then probably not that far beyond a light Corvette to a Corvette. Those, I think, are going to be kind of the equivalent of the Javelin and the Idris to pirates. Those are going to be the ships that when you need them, you got them, because there may be some difficulties in acquiring them after you've acquired the negative reputations that invariably come with piracy. But you're going to be in a much better position as a pirate to kind of swim in that area of ships rather than at the true extremes. Now, I don't discount the fact that you could probably get a hell of a lot of use out of a Javelin, in as much as I don't discount the fact that you can probably get a hell of a lot of use out of a 350. But day in, day out, I think that if you're kind of going all in on one ship, I would say that you're better off living in the kind of Redeemer, Vanguard, Cutlass to Caterpillar zone. And if you got a couple of ships and you want something with a little bit more muscle that's there when you need it, if you need it, then I probably wouldn't go that much further than a Nautilus, a Polaris, or a Hammerhead. Certainly ships that have their uses and could be very powerful when used in the right situations, but you're going to have to be very careful about how you use them. Anyways, that's my view of piracy in capital ships as of right now, December 2019, given what we know and what we've experienced in the game. These things may change in the future, but for right now, I think that this is kind of where we're at, and this is kind of where it seems that we're going right now, and so this is what I expect to happen. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.